Welcome to today's episode of Transformations, the podcast where we share remarkable stories of transformation and triumph. I'm your host, Bjoern Woltermann, and today we have an incredibly inspiring guest, David. In this episode, David shares his journey from facing debilitating physical challenges to discovering various methods and technologies transforming his health and well-being. From his early days in the fast-paced world of trading to overcoming severe back problems and his cancer diagnosis, David's story is a testament of resilience, perseverance, and the power of innovative solutions. Join us as we delve into David's experiences, the pivotal moments that shaped his path, and how he found hope, help, and strength. This episode is filled with insights, wisdom, and inspiration for anyone looking to overcome adversity and improve their quality of life. So without further ado, let's dive into the conversation and uncover David's remarkable journey. Stay tuned and be prepared to be inspired. So David, who are you?
Who am I?
Who are you?
I'm a lot of things. My wife calls me a lot of things too. I'm not sure they're all appropriate for here. But no, I'm a 59-year-old from Chicago originally, married, a couple kids.
I hope happily married.
Very much so, 33 years.
Congratulations.
Like any relationship, it takes effort, and nothing's perfect. But if you work at it, it gets to be pretty close.
I mean, it's the same thing, right? It's like in every relationship, like you get out what you put in. And
mutual respect, mutual understanding are key components.
And communicate, keep talking.
For sure.
It's a general thing, and I think in the world, like, you know, when we stop talking, then bad things happen.
Well, I always tell my wife when she's trying to communicate with someone, I'm like, pick up the phone, don't text.
Mm-hmm.
Pick it up, because when you text, there's so many different ways to interpret a text.
Yeah.
But when you actually say something on the phone, there's not a lot of room for error.
Yeah.
So that's usually my preferred.
When my wife and I met, we didn't have a common language. She was speaking Polish and Italian. I was speaking German, English, and French. But I had 7 years of Latin in school, so that helped. So she was talking Italian to me, and I'm trying to decipher that. And I was speaking English to her, and she had very little English, but it worked. And what that taught us was misunderstandings are the norm, not the exception.
Right.
And now we have 3 languages together. I learned Italian and she learned German, and now we have English together as well. But even though we speak 3 languages, it doesn't mean we always understand each other, and we kept that. So it doesn't matter what you say. It always matters what the other person understands. And
it's how it's received.
Yeah, exactly. And it's contextual and it's emotional. It's, you know, in the moment. Beautiful. So 33 years. 33 years. Congrats.
Raised my family, like I said, in the Chicago area. Got a great opportunity out of school. Went to the University of Wisconsin at Madison and got a job with a private trading company. They had 500 employees and no customers.
When was that?
This was in 1986. And
was it before or after Wall Street?
It's right during.
The movie?
It was right around
No,
that
the
time.
movie, I mean.
I think it was right around that time.
So Gordon Gekko was around at the time. Got it.
So it was a great opportunity because they had 500 employees and no customers. They didn't teach me how to be a broker. They put me in a classroom for 6 months and taught me a skill that I couldn't learn at school, because a professor teaching it in Wisconsin, if he knew how to use it, would have been on Wall Street in 1986, not in Madison, Wisconsin. So got a great education, put me in the classroom, put me on the bond floor. I traded options on U.S. Treasury bonds in the 80s. Interest rates were over 17%. Inflation was 19%. Some of the craziest times I ever saw. Took me a while to learn how to trade, even though they taught me the theory. But there's a big difference between theory and actuality. And bridging that divide is difficult for a lot of people. Even the smartest people.
Very
the
fast-paced.
Smartest people can't figure that out because their models should be theory. I'm not that smart, so I was able to bridge that gap. And I learned over time. It was like playing baseball. The more times you get to swing the bat, I knew that if I followed my rules, I made money 70% of the time. So like I taught a kid from Harvard. He graduated from Harvard at 19. Brought him down the trading floor. Over the month, he made 3 trades. And he was right on all 3 of them. He made like $2,700. That same month, I made 346,000 trades. I was right 69% of the time. I made hundreds of thousands of dollars for my firm. So I learned that perfection's okay, but it's not the best always.
No.
And I loved what I did. It was very physical. This table we're sitting in front of, there would have been 20 guys standing on it like this, pushing and shoving. And we were all frenemies, if you know what that is. Friends but enemies. We're all there to make a living. If there was a trade over your shoulder, people would jump over you to get it, myself too. And part of...
I mean, just for context, it's like, it wasn't digital. It was like
no,
still
it was
paper and
all open outcry.
Yes.
So hands, I could talk in pure hand language. It was organized chaos. And after a number of years, the physical aspect of it started taking its toll on me. Had problems walking. I walked with maybe a 30-degree list for about 20 years, just from the physical nature of the job. So like when you're about to get hit and you brace yourself, you take it. But when you aren't bracing yourself and you just get a little nudge, those little ones really affect you over time. So it got to a point where there were days I couldn't get out of my car. My clerk would come down, peel me out of the car, walk me up to the trading floor.
How old were you at that time?
30s, early 30s. And, I'd get in the pit and the bell would ring. And, the adrenaline would start taking over. Buy a couple hundred, sell a couple hundred. Oh, that's $3,000. You start doing that all day, and that adrenaline takes over, and I'd start throwing my body around. And then the bell would ring at the close, and I would just wither back to my old little form, drag my butt to the car, and try to do it again the next day.
Wow.
I had to stop at 38. I finally blew out a disc and went to see a surgeon, and I saw my MRI on the board. And there was one white disc, and everyone else was black. I'm like, that must be the bad one. And he comes in, he goes, no, that's
the only good one.
I have full spine degenerative discs. They wanted to fuse 5 levels. I won't let them do it. I fixed the one, and I struggled for another 10 years afterwards. But I just didn't want a 5-level fusion in my body.
Fusion has so many side effects.
It's 50-50 at best.
Yeah, exactly. And then also because now all the movement that your body wants to do, the others have to compensate. So now...
Well, what happens is they take some bone and build a disc, and this disc is so strong it starts crushing the one above and below, which it happened to me, the one below. So the doctor said, you're done. I recommend you stop trading. I'm like 38 years old. It's the only thing I knew how to do well in life. The first thing that I really had the confidence in, and I loved what I did. I always say I lost my career when I was 38. Couldn't walk for 20 years. I have no pension. I'm hard of hearing in my right ear, and I would do it all over again. Maybe I'm a little crazy.
No,
but
I mean, that means that you're
did.
passionate about it.
Oh, I was passionate. I loved what I did. It was great. One of my biggest fears was sitting behind a desk looking busy for a living. I never wanted that.
Yeah, no. I mean, I had an interesting conversation about 2 years ago with a dentist, and he was telling me a similar story, and he said the careers of dentists end because they're in this like uncomfortable, unergonomic position for years, and they basically end their career early when they can't take the pain anymore.
Right.
Also a customer of mine, and he said like helped him with that, and dentists should be doing it, but it's this occupational side effects and pain that I think people underestimate. Like, I mean, if we have like a physical job, or like say I'm a bricklayer or so, like we would say like, yeah, I get it. Like, if I'm a roofer, like, it's a...
Yeah, you expect it.
Right. But then there are jobs like I would have never expected a trader to be that physically grueling as a job.
It was grueling. I used to wear 3-inch platforms on my shoes just to be a little bit taller.
Yeah.
And you could hear the voice. This was 30 years later, 20 years later. I'm still raspy as ever, but I love what I did, and formed some great friendships. I was 25 years old when my dad died. And shortly thereafter, I met a guy who was putting a trading operation together. He had no kids, and we became his kids. And he's one of my closest friends today. He's 82, and he's a Katalyst user. Because for him, especially as you get older, his problem is maintaining muscle mass.
Biggest issue.
And I got him, we're both crazy. Because like 20 years ago, we bought, the little ones where you put on your stomach with 32 wires. We're both sitting there like this on the phone. We've tried everything together, but this is really something special. It's been phenomenal for him, just to be able to build a little muscle mass at his age. So we're both a little crazy.
I mean, you guys were like very early on this, apparently, on electromuscle stimulation. I mean, it's been around for about 60 years in physiotherapy. And, I mean, the doctor gives it to you like when you had an injured...
A TENS machine.
TENS machines, or like, TENS is a little bit different. So a TENS machine is actually trying to like train and exhaust the nerve so that the pain goes away. NEMS, like neuromuscular electrostimulation, is really aiming at like building up the muscle and training up the muscle, especially after injuries. And especially, let's say you had a Achilles heel rupture or something like that. It gives the Achilles heel like time to heal while you're still maintaining some kind of muscle mass. But I mean, atrophy and sarcopenia, which is like age-related atrophy of your muscle mass, is one of the biggest, almost like epidemics that we have in the country and in the world in general, because we all get older, which is being achieved by medicine preventing us to die. That's literally...
It's the wrong way of life.
Yeah, but that's what medicine generally does.
You do this, and then... yeah,
right? And but to thrive, I always say, like, everything is better in life when you're stronger.
Yeah. To
really thrive, to be able to play with your kids, or to go on a hike, or...
to catch yourself if you fall. Yeah, I have an 86-year-old mom who I tease her because she goes on a treadmill every night at midnight. I'm like, you can't do that a little earlier in the evening? But joking aside,
yeah,
she's strong.
Yeah.
She could pick up a suitcase.
Amazing.
If she goes to fall, which she's fallen a number of times, strong enough to
catch
get
yourself,
up.
yes.
Yeah, she hurts some ribs here and there, but, what do they say? You break your hip, 20% of the people die within 5 years.
Yes.
It blew me away when I heard that stat, but it changes your whole course of life.
If you break your hip, it's like you're literally on a downward spiral in current therapy and state and where we are. And especially women. Women have lower testosterone levels than men, like, obviously. But then osteoporosis is a huge issue on top of that, right? So this is why the femur, breaks when you fall. And then if you're overweight and then you fall and you don't have the strength to catch yourself, the bone has to take it. And if the bone is weakened, then... And at that age, they also don't heal really well anymore. So it's really this downward spiral. So being strong, being able to catch yourself, like trip and, balance is so important. I just had an interesting conversation with a gentleman the other day, and he was even saying, like, your likelihood of surviving a car accident is higher when you're strong, because your body can take the impact rather than just being like the victim of the car accident. You're like kind of like, you can brace for something. And I found that very interesting because I haven't thought about it this way before.
Well, that's what Katalyst has helped me so much, because I've had so much issues, so many issues. Like, I mean, the back problems were nothing compared to my next set of challenges. After I stopped trading, I wasn't really employable. I was a 38-year-old guy who knew how to count in 64ths while being yelled at. So I went to look for a business to buy, partnered with a bunch of 20-year-olds, really smart guys. I always like to say I'm the dumb guy in the room. I just surround myself with much smarter people.
Which is smart.
Which is so fulfilling because, when I was a young guy, I met my older trading partner. And
No, you were
somewhere
the
along,
older one.
I
Yeah.
became the
Yeah.
older guy.
Yeah,
I don't know how, with a bunch of 20-year-olds, and we did real well with it. And they're still some of my closest friends, both my first partner, my younger partners, really provided me some financial freedom. And then, unfortunately, I was diagnosed with cancer. So late afternoon physical, and my doctor said, anything else bothering you? I said, yeah, I got a little pull up here. I'm on elliptical a lot. And she diagnosed me with testicular cancer, which how I didn't know. I'm a guy, I thought I should have known, but she saved my life. And went through some surgery, was going to get radiated. I'm sort of type A. Let's do it tomorrow. And my wife said, slow down. And we went and consulted with a doctor in Indiana who cured Lance Armstrong. He was like the father of testicular cancer. And when I got there, he said, look, radiation, you radiate here because that's where it comes back. He goes, I think you should pass on that because you need to save your body, because if it comes back, you need to be strong. So about 9 months later, it came back. But it didn't come back in the radiation zone. It came back right near the incision. So that's when I had a summer of chemo. And I went through a lot in life. I mean, I was burned when I was a little kid, but boy, that knocked me in my butt. I couldn't be around my kids. I had no immune system. But, went through a summer of chemo. Lost my hair, lost my fingernails. I remember standing out in front of Water Tower Place waiting for my wife in Chicago. It's Windy City, right? And I started doing this, and what's going on here? And it's the hair blowing off my head. And so, you start, and it just comes out. I got a pile of hair. She goes, what do you want to do next? I go, let's go home. So she helped me get through that. And I couldn't have gone through that myself. But I came through, and I was one of the lucky ones. I had cancer twice, the curable kind. And it would be 100% cure rate if it didn't hit the most irresponsible part of the population, young men, 18 to 30. Because think about it, when you were 18 to 30, you're working your career, right? That's not your top priority. You're fine. But it does come
There's
back
an interesting statistics. Like, so in Germany, we had at least screening for conscription until 2013. So they at least did medical screening for all males in the population. And this is where they find the most testicular cancer.
Right. Yeah.
Because no one else goes to
no.
The doctor for those reasons until you're 45 or something like that. And most don't even do it then. It's prevention, right? So when you get anything early, that's where it really matters. There are really interesting new companies. So part of one of the big blessings, and my wife and I were just talking about this over the weekend, when I myself discovered EMS training and started on this journey with Katalyst now 12 years ago, short 12 years ago, overnight. We also learned so much. We learned so much about health in general, nutrition, and activities, and how basically the body works, and what you're getting told and what's actually true, and not, because we also have to advance and move forward in knowledge, and there's just so much progress and new innovation in a short amount of time, which takes about 10-15 years to be in the general public. There are a few companies, there's, for example, this blood test that you can take. It's a blood draw, and I think they can detect 50 different cancer types, even in their stage 1. And what it basically does is it looks at DNA fragments. I think it's called GRAIL or something like that, GRAIL test. And I learned about it 2 years ago. And you basically get a blood draw, and they basically look into it, and it's an early detection. It's about $1,000. You do it once a year, and you have this early detection. And when they find something, then you actually do imaging. Then you actually go and and look for
Sure.
you should look in this area. You should look at your pancreas. You should look at your lung. You should look at your this or whatsoever, your thyroid, or and so on and so forth. So, very, very interesting technology in progress. But as you said, it's like if we find things early enough, it's all survivable.
Yeah. If she didn't ask that question, anything else bothering you, a whole nother year would have gone by.
Probably.
And I think
Yeah.
there would have been a lot different outcome.
Yeah. No, it's like this early detection is like so important, and
it's also what you do with it. I mean, obviously, you go through the medical procedures, you get yourself medically healthy, but what do you do after that? And I think for me, I think I needed a change. You know, we're in Chicago. It's cold most of the year. You know, I lost my dad at 52. My brother passed away at 49, 48, 49. He struggled most of his life. He was bipolar and died of a pulmonary embolism. So, you know, I was 47, a couple of months of cancer, dad at 52, brother. I'm like, and my son was out here at USC starting his third year, and our daughter was starting at Chapman. And I looked at my wife, I'm like, I want to move. I want front row seats for the next 10 years. Because I wasn't convinced I'd be here. And she thought I was crazy, which was nothing new. It was hard to leave. My mom's still there. My sister's there. All my friends are there. But we got up and moved. Moved to California. One of my closest friends is out here. We started on the beach for a couple of years. And my wife and I looked at each other after about 2 years. We're like, we got to leave the beach because we don't do anything. We just live on the beach. I mean, it's beach life.
yeah.
It was fun, but needed to challenge this a little bit more. So we moved inland. We've been in the LA area, really throughout the LA area for about 10 years. And there's something what I like to call the glass ceiling. The glass ceiling was, I didn't think I was going to outlive my dad. 2 bouts of cancer, pretty extreme lifestyle. You know, I like to party, I like to have fun, and I was afraid of dying. And after I outlived my dad, it's like that ceiling lifted. And I went back to work again. I mean, that's a little bit of work. But I got back with a couple of my old employees, and they're my partners, and they're the operating partners. I helped raise a lot of the capital. But it's good. It's like it freed me again. You know, like once I outlived my dad, that was like an accomplishment for me. I don't know why, but it was.
I mean, it's you just breezed by, like, I think one of the most important things, where you made a choice to move to California to be with your kids and be in vicinity and be able to spend time with them, watch them grow. And that was in your whole story, this is an outlier. And it's an outlier because it was not rooted in adversity. So you didn't have to do this, right? You didn't have to do this, and there was not a third party like asking you, like, you know, how are you doing about this? Like, you chose to do that. And I think that's a beautiful choice. It's a really, because it was also not easy, as you said, right? So there were other family members up there, there were friends there, there's your network there, but you made a very conscious, decisive choice. And
it's been a good choice for me. I mean, I've got the opportunity to watch both my kids finish school, start their careers, meet their mates, get married. No grandchildren yet, but that's okay. But you know, our family of 4 became a family of 6. And I love my son-in-law, I love my daughter-in-law, and we're blessed. My wife and I are blessed. And we've been able to maintain such a network still in Chicago, and a lot of our friends have dispersed as they've gotten older. But we're in a good place.
And I bet they also don't mind visiting you here.
Everyone loves visiting. But I love living out here. It's given me an opportunity to try a bunch of things out here. California tends to be sort of the front and center of, medical health. And, I joined Equinox out here, and, it's tough. I worked out a lot for many years. And, I used to say I used to work out to eat, right? Because I like to eat and I like to have a good time. And the only way I could maintain my weight was to work out a lot. Well, as you get older, there's not enough hours in the day to work out to maintain your weight.
What did you do back in the days?
I had a couple trainers at Equinox. I'd get in there and, work out an hour with them, 3-4 times a week. And I'd always do an hour of cardio afterwards. I went through 4 trainers. They all quit, which I was happy for. Look, I'm a people person.
What are you doing to people that
right?
quit?
I thought it was me, but no, if they got better opportunities, you definitely want to see them move on. So the training manager says, all right, I'm going to hook you up with another one. I go, I'm going to do this on my own for a little while. And I did. I'd spend 2 hours doing a leg day and then an hour of cardio. I'd be back the next day doing chest and back for an hour and a half. Because I'd move slow. I know when I move too fast, I hurt myself. Mm-hmm. And, I'd usually hurt myself regardless. When you lift a lot of weights, you got the hip or you got a shoulder. What I do to my shoulder, I pulled something in my elbow. And that was the hardest thing for me is when you do that, you're out for another week or two, not working out. So a couple of years ago, a friend of mine in Chicago asked me to look at a franchise opportunity with him. I said, what is it? He comes up with all these crazy ideas. And it was this type of technology. It had a studio in the suburbs of Chicago. So we go and put on a suit, and the guy takes me through it. I'm like, this is nuts. And we looked at the financials and the number. It didn't make sense.
Studios are hard in the U.S.
But I was intrigued by the technology. Mm-hmm. So I started doing my own research, and Katalyst stood out from all the research I did. So I bought one. And I get this thing home. My wife looks at me like, are you nuts? And I'm like, you've known that for 30 plus years.
Yeah, that's not news. Yeah.
And it's been life-changing for me. And I don't say that lightly. For example, when I went through chemo, my balance went out the window. My balance, I could stand on one foot for pretty much as long as you want. And I learned that from Katalyst. Just one of the side things of Katalyst. But I started using Katalyst. I tend to be an extreme user. When you set your baselines for the suit, I didn't read the instructions first. So my baselines were way too high. And the choices were 2 things. I could spend 25 minutes redoing the baselines, or I could grow into the baselines. And I chose to grow into the baselines. I try to explain it's a full body workout, and people go, what do you mean? Well, I'm doing a bicep exercise, but at the same time, my quads, my hamstrings, my glutes, and everything else is getting a workout too. And I started seeing these changes, like muscles in my body that I never knew I had. And as I progressed through the levels, fast forward to today, I do 2 level 3s, maybe twice a week. I need that 3rd day because I am sore. When I get done with 2 level 3s, I am a full drenched. When my mom's in town visiting, she teases me because I'm going, but it is probably the best workout I've ever had, and just convenient. For example, I tried to go mix in some training sessions again, do them both.
Yeah.
And I realized how inefficient that was. So it's like, what am I trying to do here? I could do this at home, spend an hour at home, get 2 of these in, do a recovery class afterwards, which is phenomenal, and get a workout that I can't get anywhere else. So it's changed my body. I had some health issues before I started. I put on a bunch of weight. Mm-hmm. And I was in the gym every day, and I'm putting on weight.
So this was after chemo?
Years after.
Years after. You're still going, now you're going to Equinox.
Going to Equinox.
But you're still putting weight on.
So, yeah, and I started putting on a lot of weight. And I changed doctors, and I found out why. My testosterone was 50% too low, and my thyroid was slow. So as my doctor said, it's like pushing on a locked door.
Yeah, you cannot. You cannot.
You need your body to cooperate.
Yes.
And this was right when all those Empics and all those drugs were coming on the market. And I really recommend this for you. I was up at 208 pounds. I had only been over 200 pounds twice in my life.
How tall are you?
First time, I was 5'10", but with all the degeneration in my spine, I'm now 5'8". And the only other time I was over 200 was right before my back surgery because I knew I was going to be out for a while, so eating, controlled eating wasn't a priority of mine. But I said to myself, if I'm going to take the shot and get some help, I don't want to just sit on a couch because I did a lot of reading. What happens is people lose significant amounts of muscle mass.
Yes.
So I pledged.
If you don't mitigate it, it's actually one of the real big topics that we have to cover with all these GLP-1 drugs, and that is literally you're losing body weight, but you're losing the bad stuff and the good stuff.
80% of the good stuff you're losing.
Exactly. So you're losing a lot of muscle mass as well. And in general, like in this day and age, a lot of people are under-proteinated. We have a lot of warning, like don't eat meat, and then fish has this and that and the other. So we're very carb heavy, protein low, and we need much more protein, especially as we get older.
Yep.
As we get older, the body becomes less and less efficient in synthesizing protein. So a heavy protein diet is very important. But you need to exercise, right?
Well, that's what I pledged myself to. I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to change my diet, and I'm going to work out like a fiend. And that's where Katalyst has helped me immensely. I've lost 40 to 45 pounds. I'll say that I've lost 6 to 7 pounds of muscle mass and 38 to 40 pounds of fat.
Wow.
Brought my body fat from 26% down to 10.5%.
Good for you.
I mean, and the only way to do that was with the inhibitors helped,
Yeah.
but then the fitness, because if not, I'd have no muscle mass on the body.
The other interesting thing about muscle mass, and this is something that I learned like on my journey as well, because now I'm 6'4", I'm 210.
So we're about the same height.
Yeah. Almost the same. Yeah. We just when we just saw each other for the first time, I was like,
hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah, my wife always says I'm tall, and like the nice thing is like I'm not too tall, but she can wear whatever heels she wants, and she's 5'8". So she can wear whatever heels she wants, and that's
It's funny because every time we go, my wife and I leave, we'll stand by the elevator and she'll look out the window and go, I think I'm taller than you tonight.
And so in terms of muscle mass, so I gained similar thing. I was a runner. I had back issues when I was young. Since I'm young, played volleyball, stopped that. Couldn't sit in planes. 15 years later, sit in planes all the time.
Yeah.
Back blew up, and this is how my physician basically sent me to an EMS studio. At that time, and I have pictures of those days. I found them in my old, collection, one of the early days. I was about 180 pounds, but I had about 17-18% body fat. Runner. Mm-hmm. It's like this skinny fat kind of person, right? So not really muscle mass and that. And today I'm 10.5, 11%, and I'm 210, and I have almost 50 pounds of muscle mass, 50 kilos of muscle mass, 110 pounds of muscle mass. And what that did, so first of all, I changed my diet quite a bit. So it's proteins, it's what I care about. Everything else I can eat fine, but that's what I really care about during the day. But your body is burning so much during the day, so I don't have to control what I eat.
Right.
That's really but I also not I don't do chips and sweets too much and whatsoever. But if I want
go eat a cheeseburger if you want.
Go, yeah, it's fine. It's it's not the issue. It's just
it's
just the moderation.
What you just said, given where I've got my body to,
yeah,
it just burns.
Yeah.
I could really pretty much eat anything I want.
Exactly. Because what you told us a few minutes ago was I worked out to eat. And I think then you're in this like whole spiral
Cycle.
of guilt.
Yep.
Right? You know, I'm guilty that I'm eating whatsoever. Like, I'm never guilty that I'm eating, right? Because you also need to know like what you're eating, when you're eating, like, you know, these aspects. But what you're eating is so important, right? Is it clean foods, low chemicals, no antibiotics, like, you know, all these aspects, but then highly nutrient food, which is high proteinated food, you know, low processed food, like these aspects that are really, really important. Because then you almost like you have to eat. It's not to sustain your body, right? So that's really the piece. It's not this guilt thing anymore, and that's almost like a degree of freedom, so that you're not guilty. Like, you're looking at the menu. What do I want to eat? I mean, I also don't want to eat the shitty things anymore, because
it's just, for me, you know, I think it's seeing the results from working out and the help with the drugs. It takes away that food noise. You know what food noise is? Yeah. You know, you're always thinking about what you're going to eat next and where you're going to eat, how you're going to eat. I don't have that anymore. You know,
so are you still on any GLP-1s?
So I've taken myself down to a very low dose. There's a lot of benefits to these drugs. Stroke, heart attack, kidney. Studies are coming out left and right. And the negative is, they say if you go off of them, 90% of the people put the weight back on. So for me, I sort of feel like a low dose makes the most sense for me. It keeps me in check a little bit, but there's also numerous benefits. I've got some kidney issues from the chemo, so I have to watch that a little bit. You know, got a little plaque. We probably all do, except my doctor looked for it. Like you said, all this new medical imaging and technology, you know, really gives you much more insight into what's going on in your body. But I'm a firm believer of it, and no shame, no guilt. You know, I tried to lose weight for 40 years of my life. And when I look at, you know, from 2 years ago, I look at myself and I'm like, you know, I was a little pudgy. My wife said, no, you weren't. My mom said, no, you weren't. Yeah, I was. And I feel better. I feel better physically, but mentally.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, look, I look at myself and I'm like, oh. You know, now if I could just reverse the aging process, I'll be great. Because, you know, as you age, everything goes south. So you got to work twice as hard. But I'm in a good place. I'm probably in one of the best places physically, mentally. My wife and I have a great time together. I get to spend a lot of time with my kids. We're turning 60 this year, me and my buddies. So I got to go down to the Montage Laguna Beach a few days ago with my buddy here who's 60. He had a couple strokes and he's struggling a little bit. But another friend of ours flew in. We've known each other. My friend who flew in since birth, pre-birth, our moms were pregnant together across the street, and the third one here since she's 3 years old. So those friendships, you know, I always say you can't buy history. I have 60 years of history with these guys. And then I'm going to Dublin next month with a couple other buddies to go play golf for a couple days. And maybe I should touch on that for a second. I can never play golf. After, you know, I played a little when I was a kid, but with all my back problems, you know, the torque from swinging a club, I couldn't stand upright, let alone swing a golf club. So about a year ago, when we started talking about what we want to do for our 60th, we decided to go to Dublin. My wife suggested it. And one of my buddies said, we should play some golf there. Okay. I don't play golf. So I went over the last year and took some lessons and got to a point where I'm not going to make a total ass out of myself, just partial, you know, but I want to be able to go hit the ball. And I go hit 300 golf balls.
Amazing.
And my back tolerated it. Like, why? Why? Because my core is so strong that it's allowing me to do that. I thought I'd never be able to play golf again in my life.
So my lower back basically changed my career twice, and it was both times in planes. Like the first time was like, I was in the Air Force and was on path to become a pilot, or I wanted to become a pilot at the time. And then, you know, they x-rayed my lower back because I had a small injury And they said, like, you shouldn't be sitting in high vibration environments for long periods of time. So that's out. And then in 2012, I had 150 flights a year because I was running teams in all over the world. And my physician said, like, you either quit your job or we're going to end up with a herniated disc. And again, 35, right?
Yeah.
So, and I had a similar experience that you said, like, I did this workout and 2 days later I was like sore as hell. And 3 days later I was like sore as hell, especially in areas where I didn't know I had muscles. And 6 weeks later, I still remember it as of today, as I was lying in bed with my wife and I said, I haven't taken a pill in a week, which for me was like absolutely crazy because for 20 days in a month, it was normal. And as you said, like the absence of misery, the absence of pain, it's just like life becomes so much better. And it's not even that you're saying, I'm thriving, I'm like strong, I can play with my grandchildren or whatsoever. It's first of all, can we just fix the absence of the misery?
Yeah. I think back to my days, where I walked at a 30-degree list every day, every step, almost every step was a jolt of pain. And what that does to you up here. And so when I had the surgery, doctors were like, we want to fuse 5 levels. I'm like, no. And they're like, you're going to still have some problems. I'm like, okay. And I had a lot of problems. I mean, as depressed as you could be when you can't walk, you barely get out of bed. And after for the first year, my doctor's like, you need to take some pain meds. And just given my past, as a partier.
So you've gone from a list, fused spine, to now you play golf.
Right. But in between, after a year, doctor's like, you got to get on some pain meds. There's these new ones out here that aren't addictive. It's called Oxycontin. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I was miserable. A year later, I was taking 3 times the amount. It's still miserable. It's the same amount of pain. So I decided to enroll in a program at the University of Chicago. It's going to be a 30-day program. Helps you with your meds, helps you with occupational therapy, physical therapy, job loss, career. I mean, everything you could imagine. So first day I go there, I get looked at by a neurosurgeon. First thing he says, he goes, you had a fusion? That's stupid. I'm going to start crying. I'm like, I already had it, dude. Like, help me here. So this doctor says, I want to take you off the Oxycontin. We need to regulate your meds better. Okay. So he puts me on the fentanyl patch. Right? I mean, I couldn't write this story. So I said to him, I go, I've taken my meds a couple times today already. He goes, oh, you'll be fine. So I drive back from the city to the suburbs. I take my wife out for dinner for our anniversary. And I start not feeling so well. Mm-hmm. I go to the bathroom and I get sick in the bathroom. And I come up and I'm looking in the mirror and I'm sweating. And I have a V-neck shirt on. And I see the top of the patch. And I realize I'm ODing. Mm-hmm. I really think I'm ODing.
Yeah.
Rip the patch off. Get home. I come to the table. I'm like, honey, we need to go home. She goes, no dessert. It was our anniversary. I go, no dessert. So we get home and got sick a few more times. Next morning, I wake up fine. I see the Oxycontin pills and I see the patches.
None of them.
I throw them all in the garbage. There's no way I'm going to put that in my... And I knew I'd be in the hospital within 48 hours. Threw them away. Sure enough, I'm in the hospital 48 hours, completely dehydrated. And that was the last time I looked at either one of those. I'm like, that's not the way. And when I think about what Katalyst has done for me, these workouts, I never thought I lived the life that I live. I'll go in 100-degree heat. I'll go hike for 2-3 hours. I'll go walk. With my dog, when my dog was still alive, we'd walk for 3 hours at a crack. I never thought I'd be able to. Every step was a pain. So I'm blessed. I say that I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I've had my adversity, but it's perseverance. I think it's helped make me who I am.
Yeah, you overcame.
Overcame a lot. And I'm I'm blessed and I'm fortunate. I'm lucky. I always say I'm the luckiest guy in the world. And I'm a firm believer of sharing the luck and sharing the fortunate and just try to be a good person. It's not always easy, but if you put a little effort.
I feel blessed because when I found the solution for myself with this muscle stimulation technology, I was saying like this has to be known. This has to be a thing. For context, in Europe, it's a massive phenomenon. It's like there are studios
I've
at every
heard that
corner.
for years.
It's like it's on every corner. I think Germany has like 1,500 personal training studios only doing this. It's like we have more than Starbucks. Like there's 300 Starbucks in Germany, but there's 1,500 of those. It's like might also say something about coffee in Germany, but it's actually the most it's more than beer. Just for context, it's like people think like Germans only live on beer. It's not true. Only after coffee,
right?
But it's like literally on every corner.
Why do you think it's so? The hesitancy is here in the States. Was it the FDA? Was it just the norms that people are accustomed to in this country?
It's a little bit. It's like technology adoption always has a cultural component. So, for example, in Japan in the 90s, you can use your phone to use NFC chips and like buy mobilely. Like, It has been around for 30 years in Japan. Right. Like mobile payment, like, I don't know, Apple Pay has been around, 6 years? Yeah. Like something like that. So sometimes things take longer and adoption takes longer. In the case of muscle stimulation, I think it's a multifaceted story. I mean, for context, by training, so after I left the military, I sold my business that I had. We were in the computer business in the early 90s and during high school, which is like quite unusual at the time, but I thought it was the right thing to do. Again, make your own luck. Sold the company and took the money and went to university. So I'm an economist by training, but especially like human behavior. And when I was training every Monday at 6 p.m., my training partner was a 60-year-old female. And I was like, wait a minute. That's not your personal training audience normally. And her story was so encouraging to me because she said like, yeah, no, I want to play with my kids and, have like be autonomous and like not needed. Like my daughter has to bring me groceries. I can go like do my own shopping and like I want to stay healthy and active. And that was such a positive and hopeful and encouraging and inspiring story. I was like, okay, if this technology really works, it's a little bit like the electric toothbrush I compare this to for myself, where brushing your teeth correctly, like we learned this as kids and no one did it. We all did this, right? It was easier. It's like, go that way. And then these like guys from like Oral-B and Sonicare came around and just like, started electric toothbrushes. And same as the Gordon Gekko thing that I said earlier, like with mobile phones. In the early days, people were like, what do you need a mobile phone for? And then what do you need a $100 toothbrush for? And today we buy them at Costco. And it's totally normal. And oral hygiene has improved significantly over the last 30 years. The thing for me was like, it has to become mass accessible. And it was actually very close to where we are here. A year later, I was like already intrigued and like, got into the tech. I bought a device and I brought it over. I rented a suite in a hotel and I had like a bunch of my friends come by and I trained them. I gave them a training in this hotel room. And then afterwards I gave them a questionnaire. And it's like, what do you think about this? Because I didn't know, like, will Americans like it? They were already at every corner over in Europe. It was before Peloton launched. So this whole concept of people owning their stuff is much less common in Europe than it is in America.
Sure.
Like, even if you just do one kayak trip, you buy the kayak and then it gets stowed into your garage and collects dust. But Americans,
a bunch of storage.
Americans want to own their stuff, and now that I live here, I totally get it. It's like, yes, 100%. But back in the days, I was just doing business here, 5 years at the time, like going back and forth, and spend a lot of time here, but never lived here. So for me, the question was really like, is this something for this market? And because I was thinking like, so there's something that really works. It's not invasive. It's not a drug. It's short. It's efficient. It's effective. It's like, I'm like, yeah, of course it's going to work, right? So, but again, you cannot, assumptions are dangerous. So you have to prove it out. So I trained these like about 20 people, and the common denominator was, love the workout. I want my own suit, and I want to do it at home. And that was like such an interesting insight for me, even before Peloton. And I was like, okay, that's impossible at this point in time. The technology wasn't there. It was more like a piano. You need a good piano player to get nice music out of it, like just someone similar like that. So you need a good trainer to get a good training out of the traditional technology. But then, as you said, FDA, so in the United States, powered muscle stimulators are regulated as a medical device, where in Europe, they are basically consumer electronics.
Big difference.
Huge difference. And there's like 20 years of at that time, 15 years of history on them, like on full body, and on the sticky pad ones that we were talking about earlier, like probably like 40 years of history on it. And no one ever died from them, and like no one gets hurt, and so they're safe, so they don't need to be regulated like that. But as you said, like the app belt pads and whatsoever thing that you guys had here very heavily in the 80s and 90s, they were just over-marketed so much.
And they didn't work.
It didn't work. Of course it didn't work, because it was like run by a watch battery.
Right.
And the watch battery lasted for half a year. Like, how is that going to work, right? So it's just like the theory worked, but the technology was just cheap, and like the thing cost $20, and like, what do you expect this to be?
I still
right?
remember you could buy the 1632 or 64 electrode pack.
Yeah.
And my partner Joe's like, let's get the 64s. Like, why bother with the 12?
Yeah. And I mean, we have EM Sculpt now, and like, other like things that are, massively like expanding. But long story short, the form factor, which is you go to a studio, which is actually one of the biggest surprises for me that I did not expect in the data. In the US, that's, first of all, it's very hard because commuting, traffic, real estate costs, labor costs, it's like makes this very expensive at the end of the day, and makes it prohibitively expensive, so that mass adoption is going to be really hard. I mean, there are hundreds of studios now in the US. Let's not say that, but to get to the same level as in Europe, we need 10,000 studios basically, and we don't have that. So
you also have a number that will come to you. So they sort of bypass the rent, the location, the travel.
Yeah,
they'll come right to your house with the unit.
Yes.
It's expensive.
It's very expensive, but
it's a
hey,
great way to try it.
Totally. But it's not going to be a societal impact level that it's going to have. And that was my goal. I was like, I want to democratize this technology in terms of, if you want it, you can have it. And again, this was before Peloton launched. So I was like, I can't do this right out of the gate. Because whenever you have a medical device or a medical substance or whatever that is, you always start with a prescription regimen.
Sure.
So you always need a prescriber, or need to do it under supervision and so on and so forth. And I get it. It's like everything that's new has to be tested and proven. We can't give it to the end consumer right away. And I mean, we all can fly, but we don't sit in the cockpit, right? So there's just a few of us who can actually fly. I mean, a plane, like no one of us flies, like, unless we're Superman or so. So it was always a two-step process, whereas like first we have to prove out studios, we have to understand the technology, and then we build a suit that people can own. Because like the whole concept of like hygiene, where I'm wearing a suit that someone else wore before, is like doesn't really fly here. Doesn't really work. But it was so interesting that I got this feedback right away in 13, like from my friends, and they were very spot on. And of course, it took me a few years to like get there, like with the technology, with the understanding and the regulatory environment. But ultimately, the goal is this is going to be as normal as an electric toothbrush. Because the story that you are telling, there's like a million people who have like are struggling, or millions of people are struggling with like their health and wellness and fitness. And it's not about how old do I get, it's about the quality of life that I have. I actually don't want more years.
Number.
I don't want more years. I want good years, right? Just years isn't good enough.
In our country, like we were saying earlier, you live a life and then you start fading and fading, and then you live down here until you die. I want to live a life up here all the way in there and then die.
Yeah.
I don't want this.
Yeah.
And that's the breaking the hip. That's getting cancer. That's stroke. That's all those debilitating things. It just keep you alive, but are you really living?
I mean, I saw an interesting, I think it was a tweet. I don't know how is it still called tweet? I don't know. An X post, whatever it's going to call it now. And it says like, he died at 30. He only got buried at 75.
Oh, how sad is that?
Wow. And I was like, that was really, really heavy.
But that's like our healthcare system. They don't do anything to prevent it. Once you get it, then they prescribe it. I think about like if you're if a certain number is 180, you're fine. But if you're 181, we're going to give you the meds. Well, why not prescribe at 120 so you don't get to 180? Right? I mean, it's sort of half backwards.
It is difficult. It is really difficult. I mean, it's not just here. I mean, it's healthcare in general. It's like the whole, and this is why I actually got into this journey that I found so interesting around muscle stimulation technology, training beside the 60-year-old female, was technology has always succeeded when it made things easier. So a knife makes it easier to cut something, or a bow makes it easier to hunt something, or a car makes it easier to get to another city and I don't have to feed the horse.
Electronic trading makes it easier to trade than us old guys jumping around.
Or like these things make 100 different things easier.
Yeah.
And in health and wellness, especially in fitness, physical fitness, when I looked at it, I was thinking like, actually physical fitness has not improved in 3,000 years. So 600 something BC, the Greeks were running, lifting,
Boulders.
wrestling. At the end of the day, they were still doing the same stuff.
Yeah.
And yes, we have more elaborate versions of that. But it's not that, I mean, we build a steamship. I don't have to row the ship anymore. Right? With the steamship, we stopped rowing ourselves, or at least the sail stopped rowing ourselves.
The hardest thing about what you just said is consumer adaptability. I mentioned electronic trading.
Yeah.
In the late 90s, my partners and I built one of the first electronic trading platforms. The problem was nobody wanted to use it. I was a trader. I didn't want to use it. I was going to lose my job. Brokers, they didn't want to use it. And we ran out of money because we couldn't predict consumer adaptability. How long is it going to take for people to use the new wheel? So I've used that lesson. It was one of my lessons I learned because when I started another business years later, I said, okay, I don't want to build a new wheel. I want a really big market that I can get 1% of.
Yes, exactly.
And we end up getting it like 6%. But I mean, I give you a lot of credit because you're on that. You've built something new. And how do you get the consumer to adapt to it? And that's really hard. I'll give you an example. I was at dinner with my college roommate was in town. And he looks at me and goes, holy shit. And he grabs my arm and he says to his wife, Hope, look at this. He does this all from EMS technology. She goes, no way. He goes, no, look, he's right here. And I'm standing in front of her. And she just, she's a yogi. So she, in her own way, was like, nope, you can't get that done. So that challenge, how do we convince people? I mean, take your shirt off. I'm being facetious, but I think that's got to be one of your biggest challenges with the business.
I think if we do that, then Google will rate us differently on the YouTube, so we can't really do that. I think it starts with a few things, and this format is one of them.
Sure.
So first of all, when I started this and I talked to the first marketing agencies in the United States, they were saying, it's a challenge. Like, you are so different. And I'm like, that's a good thing. And they were like, how do you mean? I said, the other 20 things that people have tried all looked the same, but they all didn't work for them. So being different now actually is an advantage for us. Because coming back to this, making things easier,
Yep.
in behavioral economics, and BJ Fogg is one of the big forward thinkers in this field, you have basically two ingredients into a behavior. The one is your personal motivation, and the other one is your ability. Generally, there's a prompt that then, prompts things that actually happen. But depending on, are you very able to do something and are you very motivated to do something, determines if behavior is being formed or not. So it does not matter how much you want something if you're not able to do it.
Very true.
It doesn't matter. And before I said like, hey, I'm going to quit my job, where my parents were like totally freaking out about, and because I was on a really good path, given my age, in Germany. And I just looked and said, like, what is technology doing in health and wellness? And at the end of the day, what we've done is we've built 1 million motivators, which is good. We built like tracking watches and rings and apps and groups.
I got a whole drawer of those.
And we put iPads on other devices with like very attractive trainers that are super capable and like really well like motivating you to do something. And sometimes there's a DJ in the background. But at the end of the day, we're still being asked to do the same things that haven't worked for us before. So the way I would say this, like, we still have horse carriages, and now I have Spotify and a GPS on it, but it's still a horse carriage. We haven't created a car or a plane. It's still a horse carriage. And the horse carriage works for a lot of people.
Sure.
10-15% of the population. And all the fitness companies are battling over market share within these 15% of the population. This is US numbers, basically. 70% of the US population have a gym membership. Have one. How many of them use them is a separate question. But if we look at really health and wellness data depending on like which level of obesity and health and chronic diseases you're taking, you're somewhere between 50 and 75%. And with that burden, how are you able to thrive if you're covered with this burden? And I had this with my back, and
Yep.
you were saying like, I had this with multiple, like, much worse things. So if we keep only building motivators, we motivate the same 15% with different things, but the others are not even part of the equation. And to fix and improve life and ability at a societal level, this is where we have to go. So people always ask me, like, like you have all these like celebrities and athletes and like, amazing, like why aren't they part of? I love that they are there, and I really appreciate
The
them.
support. And
Great. But they have 1 million options. And there are 1 million alternatives. Young people have 1 million alternatives. And so the ones that, like you, like had no alternative and now are like on a totally different end of the spectrum of like quality of life, those are the ones that I really care about. It's not that I don't care about the others, but it's like that's really where the big impact is happening. And we have customers telling us, literally crazy stories where they thought there was no hope, there was no alternative, like similar to what you've been saying. And this is where technology, in my opinion, has to focus on real, tangible improvement of quality of life. That's really where this has to go. And you were mentioning like Ozempic, Wegovy, and like, all these like GLP-1 drugs before. And I have to admit that until like 5 months ago, I was also thinking like, it's kind of like misuse of a drug and version. I mean, so was Viagra, or other like drugs that we enhance quality of life. And who are we to say, oh, you can't have that? What we have to learn, I think, first of all these GLP-1 drugs are an opportunity to break vicious cycles. Is it a miracle, one size fits all? No, you still have to work out. Right. You still have to eat right. You still have to other things. But it's an enabler. And this is, again, where technology is enabling people to make change and get change. And what we do at Katalyst that is so different is the input-output equation is time, effort, what do I need to know, injury risk. We were discussing the other day is there a separate persona for like injured person? And my argument was like, over 40, everyone has an injury that they're afraid of getting back to.
Anyone who's in the gym on a regular basis
everyone,
hurts themselves.
Right? Everyone. So, and every athlete is, everyone, every biker, road biker, crashed at one point in time and so on and so forth. So technology ultimately should aim at the betterment of people's lives.
Yeah, society.
And has to make things approachable, accomplishable. And what we're doing is we're really fusing exercise science into an easy-to-use product. And this is really what the goal was ultimately, where saying this has to become the electric toothbrush. So when I hope in 5 or 10 years you're sitting at a dinner party, like the person who does not have one is there. Right. And it will be other products and there will be other companies, and be my guest, it's going to be a humongous market. It's like, I don't need to be the only one. There's like Sonicare and Oral-B.
The competition because
it all helps
awareness.
Us. Yes, yeah, exactly. But it also helps us and keeps us sharp and keeps us on our toes. And whenever there's no competition, generally the customer is
the product's not innovating.
Yes. I mean, we have a nice roadmap and we're not done yet. But in general, again, as a believer in a free market, I think it's generally a good thing. And these GLP-1 drugs, to come back to that, I think they're going to be mass used in the coming years. We just have to really be careful that we're not, how does it say, like tossing the baby with the bathwater? Or sure. Because if we say, oh, these haven't worked because they lost muscle mass, it's like, yeah, because it's unmitigated. It's almost saying like cars are bad if you do, but you don't wear a seatbelt and you don't have an airbag and you don't have a crush.
Sure.
Right? So there's always this yes and, yes, it's a good thing and we have to mitigate it. And when that's the case, I think we have a real chance in fixing a big pandemic that we have in the country.
Yeah, when you can see the results, like look, I went to the gym for a long time, and you see some results. Mm-hmm. It's hard not to.
Yeah.
But the results I see in Katalyst, like I'll be honest, like I still go to Equinox, do some cardio, and I'll walk in, I'll see a guy doing like 50 crunchies. I'm like, I mean, I hate to say that.
Yeah, it is.
You can do as many crunchies as you want, but in 40 minutes, I'm going to get a better ab workout while I'm working my whole body. And I sort of chuckle, and I almost want to go over there like, hey, have you ever heard of Katalyst? And even like the training manager there, I'm like, why aren't you offering this here?
Yeah.
And then I start thinking about it. Might put you out of business if you do, but like they should offer that.
I think Equinox is more than than just a pure training place. It's also a social space. It's a meeting place. It's a dating place. It's a, it's many things. And I think we're even talking to them.
Sure.
Because also these like gyms want to differentiate. And,
sure. How do you differentiate? How do you stay cutting edge? And this is cutting edge.
Yeah, it truly is. Yeah, I mean, this is where technology really helps people, and not just, puts more on you. It's actually making your life easier and better.
It's getting that message out. Consumer adaptability. How do you get the consumer aware?
The biggest issue for us was actually in the last years when we built this, making it mass producible. So we build a product that basically has never been built before, right? So how many smart textiles that are actually smart textiles do you know?
0.
Why? Because they don't last. The biggest problem was like make them last. And so after we had the regulatory challenges and the user experience challenges whatsoever, then it's like, okay, so you have to make this. It has to last, and you have to make it at scale. So those were like, and then in between we had no chips because everybody had the chip crisis and so on and so forth. Like a million things that were, I'm still a bit sore. COVID, supply chain. Yes, like we had a lot of things thrown at us. I'm still a bit stiff from Saturday, so okay. I'm 48 hours into my Katalyst session at the moment.
Right.
Yes, so like there was a lot thrown at us, and now we're very happy with.
See the light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh yeah. No, we are now mass producible, and we're just like really ramping this up, because now we're ready to. And this is why this is now happening as well. It's like really to tell the story, and the stories are so diverse, in a way of like age, physical fitness, previous history, goals, like wherever you go. It's such a wide variety of people that are reaching out to us. And I mean, one of the funniest things, like you reached out to, I think, our support people. One of the funniest things that I have is random people texting me on LinkedIn. So they just try to find out like who built this, and then they send me whatever they want to send me. Sometimes it's like their DEXA scans or their in-body measurements or before and after pictures. Like I find it weird that grown men send you naked pictures unsolicited on LinkedIn. But it's they're so proud of themselves, which is actually an interesting aspect. So I was also wondering, where does our product fit in the motivation field? And let's say you wanna lose a bunch of weight. You can have gone to like surgery and get a liposuction or whatsoever. You would have paid for it, but you wouldn't have earned it.
Right.
So here now you put something into it and you earned it.
But like even with the liposuction, okay, so you lose a bunch of weight. Now you're a skinny, out of shape guy. I mean, that's not going to help you when you fall or when you have to get up. But you're right. The confidence, I am proud of myself. I'm proud look.
You should be.
My whole life, I was never heavy. I thought I was a little pudgy. I argue with my mom and my wife. I bring up some pictures. I'm like, come on. And, I look at myself now and I'm turning 60. And look, aging, I don't want to get old. But aging's a number. And I feel like I'm younger today than I was 20 years ago when I couldn't walk. I have the freedom to do what I want.
People ask me like, if you could turn back the time 10 years, I said no. Like, I'm 47 now, and I'm in much better shape than I was 10 years ago. Absolutely.
Well, if I could go back in time with my Katalyst.
Oh, yeah, and do this.
That would be a little bit different.
I mean, would I go back in time and, have the blueprint, know the team, just give people a call? But that's cheating. That time travel thing doesn't work yet.
But I think getting people to understand, like I said, the dinner with my college group, she just wouldn't buy in. He's like, I got to get one.
Yeah.
She wouldn't buy in.
But that's generally what we see is like we have an interesting pattern. It's like one of the partners is getting one. Then we offer these like partner suits, which is just the textile pieces, but not the tech. It's kind of like
a second suit, same
like
controller.
Yes, same controller. So it's similar to like when let's say you buy a Peloton, you share the bike, but each of them has cleats and shorts and pants and, shirts and like whatever, like Apple Watch or whatever they're going to wear, like, all these things. Like, so they are personal pieces and then they're shared pieces. So the controller is a shared piece, similar to the bike. And then when we have couples where one partner is traveling, then like one partner travels with a controller and they're like, do you guys sell controllers alone? And then they buy that. Like, so it's kind of like a...
Could you have two different base levels on one controller, or are you sort of...
Yeah, you have your own account. Like everybody has their own account, email account. You share the controller, but it's your settings, it's your own stuff. Has your wife tried it yet?
No. She will, but she needs a different size suit.
Of course, yeah. But this is where the partner suit is then for. And you set up your own profile on the app, and it learns then her journey and it keeps your journey, and that's how you basically share all that and share the equipment. And then it's this gradual like, oh, my husband does this, and then like I'll try this, and then
No, my wife was hesitant when I first started, and she sees it now. She's like, yeah, I'm going to do this. She had some foot surgery, so she's waiting until she's done.
But the foot is actually ideal surgery. So when I had meniscus surgery in 2015, I had a prototype from another company that I was like experimenting with. And my physician, of course, said like, hey, don't put any weight on that leg for 6 weeks, and you should be on crutches and so. And I used this device, and after 6 weeks, he couldn't distinguish which leg he operated on.
Really?
Because it wasn't atrophied and that.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That's really the piece. The big challenge that we have in general is like the public has been oversold on certain aspects for a long period of time. So having hope that something actually works is low. And I think what the GLP-1 drugs are doing for weight loss is similar to what we are basically doing.
Giving people hope.
Yeah, there's a new thing. We interviewed tons of people in the early days, and they told us like, oh, I've tried this and I tried this and then I did this for a while and this for. But what the essence basically of the story is like, there were 20 things that have not worked for me. That's like, if you really like read between the lines, all these things, it's like, if anything of those would have worked, you would have stuck with it.
You wouldn't still be trying new things.
Exactly, right? It would have stuck with you, and that's a very common. It's a very common pattern, and we need to learn how to break these vicious cycles and how to get into habit forming again, and something that really works for you. And
sure, what motivates them, what keeps them motivated, and that's not the same for everyone.
No, definitely not. So, David, I have a question that I like to ask, and that is, you've done a lot in your life and achieved a lot, and I think especially in terms of relationships and connections, and on top of everything else. So, if you were a superhero, what would be your superpower?
If I was a superhero, I'd want to save the people who needed saving the most. You look at our society and you have all types of people, whether it's wealthy, non-wealthy, privileged, unprivileged. And, like I said earlier, my father taught me there's a gift to giving, and you don't live alone in this world. And if you could just make people's lives a little bit better. When I go to the grocery store, you got a bunch of items, you got maybe a minute or two at that cashier, and if most of them are usually a crummy mood because they're a cashier. And my goal is always to get them to smile.
Mm-hmm.
Takes some work sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And when I get a smile on the way out, that makes my day. It makes me feel good. You don't realize when you ask someone, how are you? You know how many times people say, wow, thanks for asking. I'm doing pretty well. Because most people, they just ignore that cashier. They just on their way. They're busy in their own day. And I just find it fulfilling to take a second, say hello. You know, my wife teases me. She goes, "You love everyone. I hear you on the phone. I love you." You know, I tell my buddies I love them. I kiss them on the cheek. You know, first, now, you know, right? Because it's harder for a guy to say that. So if I was a superhero, I'd want to bring warmth and love to the people who need it, because there's a lot of lonely people out here in this world.
I mean, we had this topic with like GLP-1 and others before. It's like everything needs moderation.
Yeah.
Right? So nothing is just pure and like this is good as it is. So, and people say to me like, what's Katalyst for? It's like, it depends. Right? Is it the only thing you do? Is it an add-on for you? Is it like a recovery thing for you? It's
interesting because when I first started, I thought it would be part of my workout routine. And it was for a very short period of time when I realized it makes no sense to do the other part of the workout. Like what I could accomplish in an hour takes me half hour just to get to the gym. And then a half hour to get out of the gym. And then 2 hours in the gym.
Yeah, for me, actually, there's an additional aspect, which is why sometimes I don't do Katalyst, and that is whenever I use the suit, I'm in work mode because I'm just
for you, yeah.
For me, like it's just I'm just thinking about like, oh, what can I do differently? What can we do better? And so on and so forth.
You know, we have a home up in the mountains, and we're just about to do some reconstruction, so we had to empty everything out. And I took half my garage and I built a beautiful gym. I got this big piece with the cables, like a bench, like a free weight, and I got all these dumbbells, elliptical, and a treadmill. So the movers are like, "All right, what goes where?" I go, "Okay, that goes to the builder because I'm not taking it." And I was arguing with my wife. I'm like, "I don't think we need all the dumbbells." She's gonna take the dumbbells.
You put a sauna in.
Yeah, I have one in my backyard.
Beautiful.
So once we're done, I'll have the sauna, the steam, the hot tub, the pool.
Cold plunge.
Yeah, cold plunge. But it's amazing how you adapt from. I mean, I love that workout machine. I used it a lot until I got the Katalyst.
I mean, you were talking about like why is adoption slow? I mean, saunas in Europe have been around for 100 years or like longer than that, and they only became a thing, I don't know, 5 years ago or like 3 years ago. It's so good. Like we really missed them. It's like we were just over Christmas in Europe, and like there was no day like where we did not go to the sauna in the hotel. And here you can't find a.
The Equinox in Century City is the only place, and the one place I was going for a sauna, like individuals, they closed because they couldn't make it economic.
I mean, we had the Wynn in the Wynn Spa. Like I went to the sauna, and they had like regulated it down for health safety reasons. I'm like, no, you make it hot for health
Same
reasons.
Thing at
it's
the
like
Montage in Laguna Beach.
Yeah.
I'm in this. It's beautiful. It's not hot.
Yeah. So this is, but also again, in defense of the people, it's just new. It's like it takes some time. The moment it makes, the people understand.
There's nothing better when I go do my Katalyst, then I go to do some cardio, and I go jump in the pool, and I go sit in the sauna. It's just phenomenal for my muscle. It just helps.
So one thing on this. So always do strength first.
Yep.
Because you need the glycogen in the muscles to do good strength training. If you do cardio first, it burns up the easy things. I always say on the strength training first. And if you do strength training and you want hypertrophy, you want some inflammation in your muscles. If you're not going like I'm training for let's say I have a match on Saturday or I have a game or something like this. If you don't do this, if you just want to go for the gains, don't do a cold plunge within 6 hours after the strength training, because you actually want some of that inflammation in the body.
Sure.
If you just totally like with a cold, if you just clean that out, you don't get all the gains. So when I like in the winter, like we went to the pool, like we don't have a dedicated cold plunge, but in the pool, and so I worked out early morning, and then we did the pool and the cold plunge like in the
Later
evening.
in the evening.
Right, early.
But your
evening.
sauna's okay after working out.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's good. But this normally when you do a proper sauna, like you would do like hot, cold, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
But for training reasons, you would have like a bit spaced out.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's definitely a thing. David, thank you so much.
Thank
you for sharing your story.
Well, I think I should be thanking you for the journey you've been on. It's really helped me immensely, and I'm grateful, and that's why I'm here today. Anything I could do to get that message out, I just want to make sure that Katalyst stays a part of my routine, because like I said, my old business partner is 82, one of my closest friends. He uses it, and it's providing him that strength he needs as you get older.
I totally believe that everyone over 55, 60 definitely should do it.
I think anyone over 25 should. I mean, you just think about everyone's day. Like, they get up, they get in the car, they rush here, they rush here, they rush there. You're running and you're running and you're running. Anything you could do to improve the efficiency of that day, not only the time savings, but I really feel good afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
I love being sore. When I could barely bend over to a time, that's a good day.
And I'm still traveling a lot, especially for long haul flights. In the hotel in the morning, no matter when my flight is, even if I have to get up at 4, I get up an hour earlier. I get a workout in. I need a little bit of time to cool down, because if I immediately go to the shower, if I go immediate to the shower, I'm still sweating too much. So the fact that I'm a little bit exhausted, muscular exhausted, then I can sit 12 hours on a plane. I don't care.
So I tend to be, I run a lot. And that's one of the additional benefits when I work out with Katalyst. My body's tired. It slows me down a little bit. It allows me to sit in that chair and watch a movie.
Beautiful.
So thank you. I appreciate it. And your team, your staff is obviously a reflection of you and what you wanted to build. I really think customer service is really important. It's important in my business, and you guys have mastered that. And I've gone through different pieces of the suit, 2 days later, and I'm out of warranty, and these guys still take care of me. So I think you really have done well with your team and how you've taken this to the stage. I hope you continue to move it forward, and I hope I see it in everyone's home, every street corner.
Thank you.
Thank you.